All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. So I am Andrew, aka Evil Islam Mindgasms, of course, and we have I see we had similar ideas for names for this. Uh, the woke infidel centrist, aka woke centrist, aka Dusty Cubes, aka Dustin Cubit, and we're gonna do a little book chat about the Quran and talk about whether Islam is really, as Sam Harris said, the motherlode of bad ideas. Of course, Mill famous or infamous, depending on how you look at him, militant atheist Sam Harris. And you and I have talked about Islam before, and you know, like we were saying before we started recording, I think it's kind of a mixed bag, like most religions, and it's not really that different from the Bible, and it's kind of contradictory and kind of repetitive. But yeah, not as big of a concern as some people think it is, but perhaps not as unique as some people think it is, but I don't know. It depends on how you look at it, just like with every religion. Anyway, so like, what are I guess, your general thoughts on the Quran and Islam in general?
I think the Quran has a lot of rules, and
Yeah,
it kind of ceaselessly talks about all the rules of the religion, um, which explains a lot. Because Islam seems to be can be a pretty conservative religion, and
I
I
think it
think
depends. I think it kind of depends on the specific sect of Islam, just like with Christianity or other religions. Like, I definitely know more about Christianity than probably any other religion, but mostly due
right,
to my, upbringing in Western culture. But, uh, but according to what little I've learned from watching YouTube videos with people talking about stuff like Sufi Islam, it seems like there are
hmm,
some sects of Islam that are kind of like mystic, and some are, the specific ones that are associated with terrorism are kind of newer, but of course, throughout the crusades, throughout history, Christians and Islam, or Muslims rather, have been killing each other. So it's not like Islam is exactly a religion of peace either. It's like, there can be Muslims who do good things and bad things.
well, no, the religion itself doesn't promote pacifism. And when I say promote pacifism, it doesn't mean that they promote aggression either. Um, it's not like in Christianity where you turn the other cheek when you're transgressed on. It's kind of like the complete opposite, where any type of transgression that is passed is, there's an equal and opposite reaction to that.
Yeah, I forget what that term is, but retributive justice or something, is it?
Yeah, like there's a lot of vengeance in it, and there are
Oh,
a lot
I
of
thought,
rules
yeah,
around that as well.
I thought
Um,
I marked a few passages here. Like, one of the ones that I thought was interesting was the different explanations of jihad, because
mhm,
this one is totally different from the way that Sam Harris describes it, like this violent terrorist justification. This is the
right.
part where it talks about jihad as a peaceful ideological struggle. But then I think later on it does have something like the more violent interpretation too of, how you should behead the infidel or something like that. But yeah, I
Well, it
don't need to
seems
actually
like
read this paragraph, but that's like, it does have the jihad as a peaceful ideological struggle right at the beginning of the book, and then I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, it has the like behead the infidels part later on in the book.
yeah. One of the things that I noticed too is they're they are particularly unkind to infidels. Like for
Hmm.
instance,
Oops, sorry,
if one
I
group
forgot I
aggresses against another group of Muslims, if they are Muslims, there's different rules of engagement versus non-Muslims.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
they're especially brutal against people who are quote unquote infidels. One thing that I know you gave me like a YouTube audiobook to listen to, and I listened to the whole thing. Um, One of the most disappointing things about that audiobook is that they did not use the word infidel.
Oh,
And I
really?
was
I
like
didn't. I
really
read. I have a
disappointed by that.
physical copy of the book that I got somewhere, so I didn't know they do that.
Yeah, in the audiobook you sent me, instead of saying infidel, they just said non-believer.
Oh, okay. I wonder why they edited it that way.
Yeah, because I always thought of infidel as something that someone from the Middle East would yell at somebody as an insult.
Yeah.
Infidel!
Yeah.
But the first time I heard that repeatedly was on an episode of Batman the Animated Series
Oh, really?
where, yes, there's an episode where he goes up against Ra's al Ghul or Ra's al
Oh,
Ghul, depending on how you want to pronounce it.
right.
Um, and Ra's al Ghul's bodyguard keeps checking Batman because he's not following proper protocol and giving Ra's al Ghul proper deference. And every time he does it, he like pushes Batman, like shoves him, and then calls him an infidel.
Oh, okay.
And the third time he attempts to do that, Batman has had enough, and he tosses the man to the side. To the side. It's like an old condom or something like that.
I don't remember the first time I heard the term infidel. It might have been on a cartoon or something like that too. It might have even been on South Park when uh I don't even remember what episode it was, but
I could
Cartman makes
imagine.
Cartman is racist against everyone, so he definitely was that way about terrorists at some point, or I mean
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
people Muslims in general.
Right, right.
Yeah, I think it's
Infidel.
interesting that I think one thing that's interesting about Islam too is that it's kind of similar to Mormonism in one way, in that it's almost claiming to be the truest form of Christianity without calling itself Christianity, but it's actually Islam, of course. But then also at the same time, though, it's actually more like Judaism in a little bit because they don't believe that Jesus was divine in the same way that Jews do.
Yes, and then according to Islam, um, I believe Christians and Jews are kind of in the same category as infidels.
I think you're right. Yeah, I don't remember actually whether that's the case, or I might be remembering a passage where they say something about how people of the Holy Book are at least better than non-believers or something. But I think you might be right that they consider them to be kind of the same as infidels or non-believers or whatever.
Right. I think, yeah, one of the differences I have with, because even like one of the differences I think about is like between Islam and Christianity, um, stories like the Good Samaritan just would not fly in Islam.
In terms of Christianity,
Well, because all right, so one of the things that the story of the Good Samaritan teaches is that um, you can trust non-believers to do the right thing.
yeah.
As a Samaritan isn't um, was not a believer, so they're kind of telling you it's like, yes, while they don't believe, it doesn't mean that those that don't believe are morally wrong.
Hmm. Yeah, another
So that's
thing that I like more about the Bible is that there's some really good poetry, and I like the apocalyptic books, especially the Book of Revelations, just because it's trippy and it's kind of like a fantasy book because there's a three-headed dragon and a sword coming out of Jesus' mouth and all that kind of stuff.
yeah. I know like the last end of the Quran, there's like chapters that are only like 1 or 2 sentences long.
Hmm.
It's like, okay,
Yeah,
that was a chapter.
there's no attempt at story structure or anything like that in the Quran. It's structured differently than the Bible that way, in that the Bible is more of an anthology of different books and different styles from different authors. And sometimes if you're talking about the Gospels, for example, it's the same story from four different perspectives. And then, like we were
Mhm.
saying, there's poetry, there's semi-historical stuff, there's all the trippy apocalyptic stuff.
Yeah, it
And
seems
yeah,
like
the Quran is like a list of
rules and
yeah,
regulations.
a list of rules. This is what you should do, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it seems almost entirely a list of rules and regulations. I know in certain points they do pull some Bible references, like some of the references from the Old Testament, and some of the stories kind of in a super truncated form, and they'll make references to those things. But I don't know if the Bible is as repetitive and rigid as the Quran is.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of seems pretty similar to me. It depends on what part of the Bible you're talking about, I guess. Maybe if you look at as a whole, it might be that way. But if you look at the Old Testament, for example, that's really fucking rigid. I mean, the New Testament is way less so, and that's all the Jesus part. Um,
Well,
but I
the
mean,
Old
it's
Testament, at least, you have some storytelling and narratives going on,
mhm.
and historical accounts and things like that, um, amongst the different characters of the Bible. Because I know both the Quran and the Bible cover Moses. I know the Bible goes into much more depth in Moses, and some of the Quran also covers the flood and Noah's Ark. I feel like the Bible is a more in-depth account of some of those stories,
Yeah,
while as the Quran just kind of lightly touches on some of those things.
yeah. And that's part of obviously the Quran is, I think, roughly half the length of the Bible. It's only 500 pages or so.
Well,
And
how big
and
is the
be
Bible? I swear the Bible has to be bigger than like 1,000 pages.
It probably is a little, it might be, I don't know, 1200 or so. Actually, I'm gonna look that up. How long
Bible
is the
page
Bible?
count.
Yeah, it's definitely over 1,000.
It's a pretty big book. Lots of pages.
Um, oh, it's telling me the number of verses. I don't need to know here we go. How many pages? Bible. 1,200 pages.
Yeah, so it's like a copy of The Way of Kings or something.
Yeah, it's like a long ass fantasy book, like a Malice Hand book or Way of Kings book or some Wheel of Time books and Song of Ice and Fire books.
Yeah, so it's basically on par with the major fantasy tome,
Hmm. That
which
is a good
means
way
it's
of
probably like 35 plus hours
yeah. Yeah, that is
in
a good way of
audiobook
looking at it.
form.
It's more like an elaborate
Yeah,
epic fantasy as opposed to like I don't know. I don't know what kind of fiction the Quran would be good to compare because there's short fiction, but often short fiction is more exciting.
Mhm. Okay. One thing about the Quran, it's from a single author.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
There
so
are
maybe
many
that's why it
different,
seems very like super structured in that way.
yeah. I mean, there are pros and cons to that too. It depends because people can perhaps are. I mean, I'm sure Muslims have been arguing about the different ways to interpret certain passages of the Quran just as much as Christians. But and some Christians believe that the Quran was literally written by God, of course, too. So they think that the Bible only had one author too. But you know, theologians and Bible historians and people like that tend to agree that it was a variety of different authors over a long period of time who put it together.
Mhm. Hmm. Because I know the Quran, um, just feels like it's reinterpreting the Bible with a more strict code of living life in a particular way.
Yeah, and there isn't. Well, wait, no. Muhammad supposed to be a divine figure?
I don't know. I don't think you're supposed to like depict them or anything, but um,
Because it seems like I was gonna say maybe he's the Jesus of Islam, but it's not really.
no,
He's
I
not
don't. I
the.
don't
He's
think it's
more of
like
like
that.
the crusading warrior. Jesus was like a mostly well, not perhaps not pacifist, but very like not violent, more political revolutionary perhaps.
Yeah, they had different roles in history. That's for sure, and they were
Yeah,
depicted very differently. Um, because forgiveness in these two religions are very different.
hmm
Um, because of course, I think Islam is probably closer to Judaism than it is to Christianity.
yeah, I would say so too, like because it doesn't because Jesus isn't divine which is the same as Judaism. I think that's the biggest reason.
Right. One of the other things, do that wasn't very, maybe I just was not paying attention too much. I do know they do cover the story of Moses, and I really didn't. Do they also follow the Ten Commandments, or am I like mistaken that they don't?
I don't think so. I don't think they have the
Because they
Ten
do
Commandments,
mention
but
Moses and
But
the.
yeah, they do have Moses and other Bible characters too. I marked down this part here about Abraham from the Bible as well.
Because I know they discuss the burning bush, and they also discuss Moses and the stone tablets or whatever they call them in the Quran.
Right, yeah. I don't I forgot that they even mentioned that, but yeah, so let me see. I'm going to look that up too. I'm pretty sure they don't follow the 10 commandments. I
And I wonder how different Sunday school would be for a Muslim than it is for a Christian.
well, I think I don't know if it's this way with children, but it wouldn't surprise me if it is because it's the with adults anyway. It's segregated by gender.
Well, at least from my own memory, um, Sunday school they primarily focused on the fables and tales in the Bible
Yeah,
for the most part, like the different stories from the different characters. Um, that's what I remember as a child growing up going to Sunday school. There was always a focus on these different little stories that you can find in the Bible, like Passover and Cain and Abel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. If I
Right.
ever became a writer, I believe I'd make a main character his first name Abednego, just for shits and giggles. And it'd be
So,
the character would be black. So it would be like Abednego Washington or Abednego Jenkins or some shit like that.
that'd be funny.
and,
Uh, so
and he would
apparent.
have powers, and his powers would be that he is fireproof.
Oh, okay. Why would he be fireproof?
Because Abednego was thrown into a furnace and he survived.
Oh, right.
You don't
Okay.
remember that story, man?
No, I don't remember. No,
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
no.
well,
Um.
from what I remember, they were thrown in some type of furnace or something, and they, like the mother of dragons, they survived the flames.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. No dragons in the Quran either.
No, there's not much supernatural stuff going on in the Quran.
Yeah. Um. So I just did like a little cursory googling here, but it kind of seems like I'm guessing there are kind of different answers that you can give about whether Muslims follow Ten Commandments, because it sounds like they don't exactly, but apparently Islam does, however, accept the status of both Moses and Jesus as prophets, which means the
Right.
commandments are not completely ignored either. And then there, and then I also see here commandments of Islam, but it looks more like Islamic etiquette, so I don't know which one that means. But there's similar ones to Christianity, but not the same ones. They're don't lie, don't spy, don't exalt, don't insult, don't waste, feed the poor, don't backbite, and keep your oaths. Does that mean don't swear? I think that's what that means.
I think keep your oath
Or
is
maybe it
like,
means keep your promises?
yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Oh, yeah, that would make more sense.
Like honor your verbal contracts.
Right. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. I think that, you know, it's interesting. That's why, well, one of the main reasons I like investigating religions more nowadays is that, I'm not threatened by them. I don't think they're evil or something, and I have a more nuanced perspective about them. Just like with every religion, with Islam, people have used it for as justifications to do bad things, and they've also
Mm-hmm.
used it as justifications to improve their lives and improve the world. And yeah, I agree that, in my opinion, the Bible is a bit of a better book, but how good a book is far from all that determines what religion people follow. Obviously, you know just as well as I do that the one of the main factors is just the culture that you grow up in. So if you and I were not raised in North America and in weird culture, Western educated, industrialized, rich, democratic culture, and we could have easily both been born in some part of the world which is has a majority Muslim population and have cultural reasons to be more interested in Islam than Christianity.
Right. Yeah, I kind of feel like if we were going to make some comparisons, and I don't know, analogy like might be the wheel of time and the one power. I would say that Christianity, Judaism is more like Sidar, and Islam is more like Sidene.
And I don't I always forget which one is which. Is Sidene the female power and Sidar the male one?
Sidar is female.
Oh,
The
okay, other way around.
Christianity would be the female power, and Sidene would be kind of like the male.
So why
Because I
why
feel,
is that, do you think?
because I think like Christianity is more about a surrendering to Jesus, which is kind of how the female half of the power works.
I think
Uh,
like I would agree with you that about that being kind of an essential interpretation of Christianity, but it again, like, it depends on what type of Christianity you're talking about too, because you were just as familiar as me with the I prefer the Christians who have that approach, but then they're super conservative Christians who basically follow the most conservative possible interpretations of Christianity, like, abortion is evil, no sex before marriage. My friend Shane, who I talked with on here a bunch of times until we basically had a falling out over the abortion issue, was like that. But then again, there are people like my parents and like Hayden Bruce, who I talk to a lot, who have interpretations of Christianity that I think are totally admirable, and they use it to enhance their lives and make the world a better place and all that. And then there are people who call themselves Christians who think they don't need vaccines because they've been washed in the blood of the lamb.
Okay. Yeah. I just think it's weird when they try to take these concepts that don't really apply. Like this shit doesn't apply to the vaccine, so I don't know
Yeah,
why they try to
obviously,
apply it to.
obviously, like, the Bible can't tell you jack shit about fucking whether you should take vaccines.
Yeah, so and then they're really selective about that because they've taken vaccine at some point in their lifetime.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, yeah, I know there can be different interpretations and more conservative forms. Like the more rigid and rules are in place to be followed, it almost seems like the more likely you're going to look down at those outside of your sect
Yeah, any
because they
any
are
kind of any kind of fundamentalist, right? Like any Christian fundamentalist, Muslim fundamentalists, militant atheists who are basically anti-religious fundamentalists.
right. So those are the people who are basically are intolerant of those outside of the group,
Hmm.
um, which is I don't know. I just and don't really understand that because you're just kind of being it's kind of like the woke scolders. They're kind of like the same type of, I think, basic brain space as
Yeah,
those
I think
who
you're right. Yeah, like woke scolders, or like anti-woke scolders like Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay, or you know anyone like that, religious fundamentalists of any kind, whether they're religious or not, or whether they're political or not, or whether they're woke or not.
yeah, so they're always looking on the outside to push others instead of being tolerant and accepted.
Right.
Um, and the more conservative and the more heavy leaning, that may be the case. But I have some neighbors um, that are like hardcore Saudi Arabian, like the most conservative Muslims that you could think of. Like I don't know, like I we've they lived in our apartments for over 6 months. I have no idea what his wife's face looked like because outside of the home, she's always covered up.
Oh,
Like
what's
because
that
there
one called?
are
It's the one that covers you from head to toe.
um well no, she doesn't wear specifically that, but she'll wear like a headscarf and then instead of um a burqa, she wears just like a regular like surgeon's mask.
Okay, so she covers her face, but with a
Yeah,
with
she
a
doesn't wear
surgeon's
like a
mask.
burqa. She just wears like the normal Muslim head covering with a included like surgeon's mask.
Okay. Hmm.
And my wife has visited them in their own home, and she says, yeah, she's like a completely normal looking person when she's not all covered
Oh,
up.
so you can see you're allowed to see her without that stuff on when she's in her own home?
Only women can. I wouldn't be able to.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I've never visited their home because I didn't want to make them feel uncomfortable.
Right.
Um, Basically, my wife would go and visit them, and then they'd be completely open. And they have like a bunch of rules. Like I know one of the rules is um, they had another friend that was a woman that was also Muslim, and if she came to visit them, her husband would have to leave.
Oh,
He
really?
couldn't, yeah, he couldn't be there with them.
Oh, okay.
So, but
And I
he
know
said,
too that women women have to get escorted when they go out in public, or at least when they go on dates for sure.
yeah, I don't know all about that because I know she didn't have to be escorted or anything. I know she didn't
Okay.
drive.
I think that this based on a fictional example, of course, but there's this Canadian show called Little Mosque on the Prairie, which is about Muslims who live in Saskatchewan in Canada. And
Mhm.
on that show, women didn't have to be escorted by men everywhere, but only if they were on dates. If they were on, if the no, not necessarily by a man either, but by another adult. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like investigate them, like ask them too many questions about their religion. I just didn't really want to pry too much um, about that. But they were like completely, um, I would say like very hospitality focused. Like they're very, very nice people. Um, I always felt like welcomed around them. And her husband was like studying linguistics at the local university. So we always
Cool.
had like a lot of interesting conversations about linguistics and things like that.
Cool.
So yeah, they were really likable people, very hospitable. Um, even so much that I would like help them with things. Like I helped fix his car a couple times.
Oh,
Very
okay.
nice people. His children are very nice. So they played with my daughter, you know. So yeah, they're very nice people. They liked being in America. They're learning the language, trying to adapt to American society. But then
Okay.
again, in my area, it's not uncommon to see like Muslims
Oh,
in
okay.
varying degrees. Like you'll see, it's rare to see like the ones that are completely covered, but it's not uncommon to see the ones that just kind of dress conservatively and wear like head scarves and things like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say, um, of the Muslims that I've seen out in public here in like conservative Christian Alberta, they probably dress similarly too, like, just kind of conservatively and usually just wear the headscarf, I think.
Right. And I know there's like not all Muslims are like conservative.
Yeah.
I've seen certain, like one of the things I watch a lot is this show called 90 Day Fiance. I know it sounds
You've told me
completely
about that
ridiculous.
before.
Yeah, I know it sounds completely ridiculous, but one of the interesting things about this show is you get to learn about cultures. You get to learn about how different cultures, um, their rules around dating, their rules
Okay.
around marriage, and how vastly different that can be from like the average expectations you might see in the U.S. Like there's
Oh,
huge differences in Indian culture. There's huge differences in Egyptian culture. Like those are the things that I find really, really interesting.
oh yeah, for
And
sure. That does sound really interesting, actually. It reminds me of the part in Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind, when he's talking about how he became more of a centrist and a little bit less of a liberal or progressive when he stayed with a family in India and learned to respect their cultural differences in terms of, some of the stuff we're talking about, like women apparently needing to be escorted and wearing headscarves and stuff, that it's not necessarily as oppressive for all those women as as it might seem to us here in North America, where women are not like second class citizens.
right. And a lot of the things that is interesting too is just um, how naive some Americans are in regards to going into somebody else's culture and not being able to respect that culture or understand it.
Hmm.
And like I said, there's many different. I've seen many different versions of Muslim on this show because I swear every season has at least one couple that has a Muslim member. And
Okay.
in this recent season, one of the couples is in Egypt, and she is from LA. She's like super fashionable, and then she goes to Egypt, and her husband, who she's been married for 3 years, has been like a long distance marriage, and she's finally trying to settle down. And he is super conservative.
Okay.
Um, but along her journey, she meets another woman who's also Muslim, and she kind of says like, yeah, there are different interpretations, and the way that we interpret it here is not that. There's nothing in the Quran that says a woman must wear a there's nothing in the Quran that says a burqa is a necessary garment.
So do,
She,
do women wear it because it says something about how their skin should be covered, or their face, or they shouldn't show their hair or something like that?
well, according to this woman, she says that the rules are that women must dress modestly, but they
Okay.
never go into exact detail what that means,
Okay.
which is why
So,
you see varying degrees of women either going to full burqa to not wearing anything at all where it comes to covering
okay.
their head or anything like that.
So it sounds like it depends on your specific sect of Islam, like with many other religions.
Right. So it's up to interpretation, and which is funny because I've heard. I think there was this one feminist who was making the rounds, who wore like headscarves and things, and it seems to me like, hmm, there's nothing in the Quran itself that says that someone has to wear a headscarf.
Right.
So I don't know. It's pretty interesting,
Yeah, it is.
but as far as like the Quran goes, man, there's so many rules in there. And sometimes the rules aren't
Yeah.
straightforward either. They might be a little vague, like, oh, you must dress modestly, and what does that mean exactly? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be interested to learn more of the different interpretations of the rules from different sects of Islam.
Yeah, because I'm guessing there's like the similar thing with Christianity, right? So you have those that like at the church that I've been attending, um, they don't seem to have any like crazy dress code or anything. It's just like normal people go in. Some people go in with t-shirt and jeans and anything else. Whereas there's like some churches that you go to, if you were to wear anything but your Sunday best, you might get a weird glance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Like,
I think
I know
it's
when I was growing
yeah,
up, I
that
always had to
definitely.
wear a certain attire.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that definitely depends on the person and the church too, I think.
Right.
Like when I was a kid and I would go to church, sometimes I would dress up, but I think when we were kids, our parents kind of made us do that, but then they gave us the choice when we were older, and we decided not to mostly. But yeah, depending on what church you go to, it might be the case that everyone is dressed up there and you'd look out of place if you didn't do so.
Yeah, because I know when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to wear a t-shirt or jeans to church.
Right.
No shorts, no t-shirts, no jeans. So, we weren't wearing casual clothing when we were in attendance.
Okay.
Um, so, yeah, I guess it just depends on how you were raised or how you grew up with. But and even though there are some sects of Christianity that you have a very pretty strict code of dress, like at least Pentecostals, I know have a particular way that they have to dress.
Oh, really?
Like I don't think the women are allowed to wear pants.
Oh, okay.
They have to wear like very long dresses and skirts, and pretty conservative wear for the women.
Okay.
Um, and I've
Hmm.
seen like some other weird sects of Christianity where they have to wear like seems like garb from the 1800s or some shit. Their women have to wear weird things like that, like high neck dresses that are like long sleeve that just look like something an old grandma would wear. An old grandma from the early 1900s.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think there was like this weird cult that were. If I'm trying to remember, there was like this weird cult. It was like a polygamous cult where all the women had to kind of dress like that.
It was a Pentecostal one?
No, polygamous. Like, um,
Oh, like a Mormon one?
I don't know if it was Mormon exactly. The only thing I remember is that they practiced polygamy and the women had to wear like really frumpy clothing.
Oh, okay.
But
Hmm.
the Quran, yeah, the Quran. It was really difficult for me to focus on what it was saying
I
because
bet
it was so
I
freaking
bet it's more
repetitive, man.
boring as an audiobook.
Probably that's probably just the unfortunate case that I had to go through it as an audiobook. But I don't know. It was definitely hard for me to focus on
Yeah, I get that.
it. And I think it's mostly from because of the repetition and the prose is like I know in some sections of the Bible the prose can be quite poetic.
Hmm.
The prose here is like very saccharine. It's like a very sanitized prose.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Um,
Yeah, I think
and it's
I think there you'd have to go to some of the writings from like, maybe people from Sufi Islam, like I mentioned. Like I've watched this I've watched this YouTube channel. I think it's called Let's Talk Religion. Yeah.
mm,
That's I forget who sent it to me. I think it was maybe Mickey L. Murphy from Mixed Mental Arts, who I still talk to.
mm,
Um, I think he recommended that to me, and it's really interesting. It's this guy who he mostly talks about different types of Islam, and he talks about one that's similar to Gnostic Christianity, for example, and then there are the like especially some different types of Sufi Islam are more mystic, and lots of famous Muslims throughout history have written poetry about that kind of stuff. So that would be perhaps interesting to look at, but it seems like it's harder to find that sort of stuff. Maybe just part like again because of our culture, people just know where to look less for that kind of stuff.
Well, maybe it's harder to find possibly because how popular is that version of Islam?
I don't I don't think it's a mainstream version.
Hmm.
Let me see.
I wonder if
How
that kind of
popular
plays into it.
popular is Sufi Islam? Popular in such African countries as Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Sudan, Morocco, and Senegal. Oh, so it's kind of like an African form of Islam. I didn't know that. And it
Okay.
where it is seen as a mystical expression of Islam. Yeah. How many? Oh, that's a good question. How many Sufi Muslims are there? About 15 million.
That's
How many
pretty
How many Muslims
sizable.
are there? Aren't there like a billion Muslims?
About, yeah, there's many.
Yeah. Yeah, 15 million out of a billion or so isn't very
That's
many.
pretty small. Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
a very small percentage.
Yeah. What I if I remember correctly though, the types of Islam that are associated with terrorism that people like Sam Harris and all the other militant atheists like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens were talking about, I'm pretty sure those are pretty new and still small and mainstream too, if I remember correctly. I forget what I forget what those are even called. Do you remember what those are? And I don't mean specifically Shia, and I don't mean Shia and Sunni Islam. I think
How
like
about like
they're is
Wadi,
it
like the ones from Saudi Arabia?
which one?
Like the ultra
Uh,
conservative
is
ones
it
from
Wahhabi
Saudi
Islam?
Arabia.
Is that
Yeah,
what it
that
is?
one. Wahhabi is
Um,
like the Saudi Arabian, like very conservative
oh, okay. How
Islam.
popular is I keep saying wasabi Islam in my mind.
Yeah, spicy.
Yeah, how popular is Wahhabi Islam? Wahhabism is a Sunni Islamic fundamentalist movement originating in Najd, Arabia, founded eponymously by Arabian scholar Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab. Okay, but what is the population of Wahhabis? It looks like Qatar and, like you said, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates have the highest number of them.
Hmm.
Sunni. Who is more Sunni or Wahhabi? Boundless majority of Muslims are Sunnis, apparently. Approximation suggests figures somewhere between 85 and 90%. It is important to note that the Wahhabi ideology itself is extreme in its interpretation and can turn militant over time. It sounds like most Islams are Sunnis, or I mean, most Muslims are Sunnis rather, but most Muslims are not Wahhabis or Wahhabis or whatever you
Right.
would call them.
Yeah, Wahhabists are like an extremely conservative form of Islam.
Yeah, and like again, I keep just thinking, it's a mixed bag, obviously. Um, like when people like Sam Harris talk about, I remember when I was still a militant atheist, I remember like just believing, but even then questioning a little bit. I watched a video of his where he was talking about, he was basically dismissing the whole golden age of Islam and stuff that came out of it, like all of these, well, like the number zero and words like algorithms and all sorts of different innovations and that kind of stuff. When Muslims and Christians aren't killing each other, they tend to be capable of great innovation.
Right. But right now, for the most part, I don't think that Muslims and Christians are killing each other.
Yeah, no, not really anymore. Like
Right.
the most of the divides nowadays seem to be between woke people and anti-woke people?
Well, most of the divides these days seem to be internal.
Oh, like infighting? Or you mean like
Yeah.
in
Well,
specific
just like,
countries?
yeah, in specific countries. Um,
Yeah, I'd say that. Like also the I talk all the time and you do too about how, the threat of wokeness is greatly exaggerated. And then there are anti-woke people who are just as cringy as woke people. And, you know, most people don't really like if you go out on the street and ask a regular person, they probably wouldn't give a shit about wokeness.
well, to me, like the anti-woke movement to me is more akin to schizophrenia than it is to reality.
How so?
Well, just like they're fucking paranoid about everything, man. Like
Yeah.
I think everything is gonna lead to societal destruction. Um,
You know those
well,
gay
Elvis,
guys on The Last of Us? That's part of the woke communist agenda, bro.
yeah, it just reminds me of all the boomers that were, well, the pre-boomers that were spazzing out against Elvis and Chuck Berry and shit like that.
Oh yeah, of course.
So Elvis and
Yep.
Chuck Berry back
Dancing
then
and
both were
rock and roll are
fucked.
threatening.
Yeah. Same
They lead
moral
to
panic
sex.
type crap, it's
Hmm.
insane.
Well, and a lot of those anti-woke people also, as you and I both talked about a lot before, are paranoid about trans people too. All the kids are going trans now, and I don't even think anyone should be allowed to have that surgery. Basically, doctors who perform transition surgeries are the same as Nazis.
Yeah, I think it's just a problem where the issue basically is that conservative policy positions are unpopular,
Hmm.
so they
So
kind of
they
have to rely
distract
on these
people with the culture
principles.
war shit, right?
Yeah, basically, it's most of the stuff that they espouse in economic policy and things like that are not super popular.
Yeah.
So they kind of have to resort to these culture war um, wedge issues to stay,
And then like those
relevant.
anti-woke people become or start declaring themselves as conservative over the culture war shit and don't even care about policy shit anymore.
No, none of them do. None of them give a crap about that. The only thing they talk about is
No, I don't either. But
the
I just think it's
grifter
kind
topics.
of entertaining and hilarious when it happens. Like, Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, people like that.
Well, it's funny because like Dave Rubin, we've seen him get trounced when he talks specifically about policy. And we saw him get trounced by like Rogan. It's, you know,
Oh yeah,
so
how there shouldn't even be a postal service and there don't need to be regulations for construction companies.
right, they just kind of get trounced by that. So that's why they have to kind of rely on these moral based panic culture war topics because these are hot button issues for certain people.
Hmm.
And a lot of people have strong feelings about these intangible things. Because since these things are pretty intangible and the way they describe them are intangible, it
Oh
becomes
yeah, for
hard to
sure.
quantify them. It
I
becomes
noticed that
hard
more
to
and more
qualify.
when when I do specific videos criticizing public intellectuals, like the last one I did on Ben Shapiro, for example, he'll say a bunch of shit, and the last one with I did on James Lindsay too. They'll make all these like fucking massive accusations and not list a single actual example, not give any evidence whatsoever. They'll just like everyone knows that the wokesters are serving the everyone knows that the wokesters are serving the communist agenda, okay? And Disney is woke because I'm showing you this one example of two guys kissing each other from one show.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I guess I guess it's just it's like a human version of the anger and outrage algorithms that are on our social media platforms.
Yeah, for
They're
sure.
just kind of capitalizing on those things and using them to their own. And it's funny because, like, yeah, they push these things, and on the side, they're pushing like these super unpopular policies that, if they weren't tied into these culture war issues, people wouldn't care. So it's like,
Hmm.
man, um, it's like the big tax cuts. They're like, oh, we don't care about that because he's triggering the libs. You know,
Yeah,
they don't care about these bad policies. They
I'm
don't
gonna
care
vote for
about,
Trump because he triggers the libs.
yeah. So it's, I don't know. When I think of policies and, how, when I think of policies, it's like, how do we serve the most people in the
Hmm.
best way possible? And how do we make families stronger? How do we make, because for me, I like to think of, if the family unit is healthy, that kind of is like the nucleus of American society. It's like the family unit. Um, because I
I
know
think
everyone's
that
like, oh,
I definitely think that
the individual. But I
I
think the
definitely think
family is
that
also important.
parenting is the most important job in the world, and often people don't pay anywhere near enough attention to that.
Yeah, yeah, it's very important. Like your school, I don't even think school is 50% of a child's education. It's probably more like 30.
Yeah,
Because there's definitely differences between, you can tell how well a child does in school based on how involved the parents are in that
hmm
child's education.
yeah. Like how many? I think there have been studies that showed that even just having books in the house can help
Hmm.
lead to children being better at learning. And yeah, if their parents actually care about them, like they say, did you do your homework, or and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's a different thing. Like when your son or daughter is actually excited to receive a book as a gift,
Definitely. Yeah,
versus those that like,
my parents brought my brother and I up very well that way. That's definitely why I love reading so much today.
yeah, because I just got, when my daughter, I gave her a Pokemon chapter book today,
Oh,
and
okay.
she got like really excited about getting a Pokemon chapter book. And she's like, "Oh, can you get me this next one?" I was like, "Well, you got to finish this one first, and then you can
Sweet.
get the next one." So
Sweet.
yeah, she really likes receiving books as gifts. She has like a I think her library is like bigger than mine now, as far as like book count.
Like she's read more than you?
No, she has more than me.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. I remember my mom, well, my mom reminds my brother and I often that, once we learned to read, we thought it was like a magic power. You can read this book and use your imagination and your knowledge of words to learn this awesome story.
Well, it kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah. And you can learn information, experience awesome fiction.
Hmm. Let's see. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, books are amazing. I know that for sure.
Yep. I think that to bring it back to the Quran, I think like the Bible because um, they're a huge part of the world. Um, it's definitely worth reading the Quran, even just to find out that it's either not as bad or not as good as you thought it was. Like I keep saying, it's basically a mixed bag.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's definitely worth reading, and takes less time to read the Bible, like we were saying. So
Mm. Yeah, I know. I think since the Quran is just full of rules, it also seems a bit more litigious than the Bible.
yeah, I would say so, probably. I mean,
Because they even have like resolutions, like how to resolve certain transgressions
yeah,
and what
yeah.
somebody is
I think
owed if this thing happens, and
there are
et
books of
cetera,
the
et cetera.
Bible that are like that, but again, it's not like the majority of the book. But again, if the book of Acts or a whole bunch of other books like that, those they're basically just books of laws, and some of those books are the ones that are accepted by Judaism, which is why Judaism can seem a little bit more rule oriented than Christianity. But again, that seems open to interpretation too.
Right? I believe it's just that Judaism doesn't have like the forgiveness aspect. So they can't be forgiven if they murder somebody or something like that.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. Like even in Catholicism, which is, you know, is more likely to be more conservative than some other different types of Christianity, which is part of why it's almost considered a different religion entirely to some people, even though it's technically still Christianity. You know, Catholicism has the idea of confession, of course, so you're absolved of your sins.
Right, there is that. But it's weird that you have to like actually tell some human those things.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
Yeah, I think in Catholicism they kind of put an emphasis that you don't have that direct connection with God, and then you have to use this intermediary to do things
Hmm.
like confession and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things about religion, that you have to have faith in the belief of God and that sort of thing. And it's true depending on regardless of what religion you're talking about, really. But again, that depends on what particular sect you're talking about too.
Right, right. And one of these days I'll have to try to read whatever text the Mormons read.
Oh
See
yeah,
what's going on with
I
them.
actually recently, just because I happened to stumble upon it on YouTube, I listened to an audiobook version of some early Mormon apologetics and that sort of stuff, and it was mostly phenomenally boring, but there was some that was a little bit more philosophical and was criticizing other Mormons that was a little bit interesting.
Hmm. Well, isn't there like a Book of Mormon or whatever?
Yeah, I haven't read that. I haven't read the actual Mormon holy book.
Yeah, that's what I would be interested in checking out someday.
Yeah, I would probably read that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Do
All
the
right.
Jehovah's
Well,
Witness use their own text, or do they just?
oh, that's a good question. I'm gonna look that up.
Because I know they have some pretty different rituals and rules that
Yeah,
they
like you
live
can't get a
by.
blood transfusion, for example.
Yeah, you can't drink, you can't smoke, you can't drink coffee. I think the Mormons can't drink coffee either.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah,
Do
they have.
Jehovah's Witnesses have their own holy book? They have their own translation of the Bible, New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. They refer to the New Testament as the Christian Greek Scriptures, and they call the Old Testament the Hebrew Scriptures. Oh, okay.
Hmm.
So it sounds like
Because it
maybe
sounds.
just slightly different interpretations of the Bible. I don't know.
Right, yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know you need to get going pretty soon, right?
Yep, yep. Yeah, I'll be needing to get going.
All right. Well, thanks for talking, man. This was fun as always. And yeah, I think maybe maybe next weekend we should do that chat about God Emperor Dune that we were gonna do, but I'm not finished the book yet.
Oh, I'm not either. I was listening to it today. I was
Okay.
like, man, this is actually a little bit more interesting than the first time I went through it. I
Yeah,
think I
I
just
found
kind of
that
breezed.
for all of them so far.
Yeah, because the first time I went through it, I just kind of like breezed through it a bit. But since I had more context before and after, I'm kind of paying a bit more attention to this one now.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so that'll be fun to talk about. We can talk about that
Yeah,
next weekend. And then
Jabba the Hutt.
also, yes. Yeah, Leto becomes giant worm god emperor. Some of the
And
weirdest shit in the
basically
series
becomes
for
like
sure.
super genius Jabba the Hutt or something.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
And he
Yeah,
kills
so
one of the Idahos by rolling on
yeah, that's interesting too. And
him.
there we see that there have been an endless succession of Duncan Idaho Golas or clones because Leto likes having him around, even though it's been 2,500 or 3,000 years since the last book, I think.
Well, it says Paul Atreides in him that wants the Golos around. That's like his best friend.
Yeah. Yeah, so everyone watching, look forward to that next weekend. And yeah, check out our last chat on Dusty's channel about part 2 of Crossroads of Twilight, book 10 in the Wheel of Time. And check out my last video from the other day about the philosopher Slavoj Žižek and the historian Yuval Noah Harari speculating about whether humanity will survive in the future or not. And yeah, also next the next one we were gonna do on your channel was gonna be uh fuck I'm forgetting that. Oh, Mad Max 2, right? Yeah.
Right. The
Yeah.
Road Warrior.
Yeah, I just watched that the other day. So yeah, you want to talk about that on your channel next weekend too?
Yeah. I'll have to watch it sometime between now and then. Well,
Cool.
rewatch it, even though I've seen it a bunch of times, but I want to rewatch it.
All right, cool. Sounds good, man. All right,
Yeah,
thanks everyone
that
for
movie is
watching. Sorry?
super metal. I'm saying that movie is super metal.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. Yeah. All right, thanks everyone for watching. Tell us your thoughts about Islam and Muslims and different religions and that sort of stuff in the comments. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. Share this everywhere. Check out my Patreon page. Link is in the description as always. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all and grooves in the heart. And you should read the Quran and the Bible to learn more about these different religions instead of just listening to what people say about their own particular interpretations. Definitely worth
For
educating
sure.
yourself. All right. Thanks again, everyone. And anything else you want to say before we end it there, Dusty?
Oh, that's it. Everybody enjoy themselves. Enjoy the rest of the week.
All right. Thanks, man. And thanks again, everyone. And adios until next time.
All righty. Adios.